Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Open Source Office. Once again, this is Tex. I'm the Open Source Program Manager here at Intersect. I am joined today by John Green, and we're going to take a look at a project, Aiken, as well as some other things going on with the Cardano Foundation. John, how's it going?
Hi, Tex. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, as I work for the Cardano Foundation, I write the content for Cardano Academy. I write the scripts for the video content, and I've written a few books about Cardano as well. So I've been involved in Cardano for a long time, and it's a privilege to be able to write content for Cardano and as a day job. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, definitely thanks for sharing, John. Anything else that we should know about you before we get started?
Sure. I guess I'm working for Cardano for 2 years now, but I started a long time ago, really. I did my master's in Cardano in 2018, so I'll just share my screen maybe. 1 second. Sure, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Cool. Yeah, so I was lucky. I did my master's in University in Nicosia in 2018. At the time, I was working for Oracle, and they were good enough to pay for it. And it was during that time when I was doing the master's, one of our first assignments was to write a paper, and my colleague suggested Cardano, and I hadn't really heard of Cardano at the time, so I think it was in the top 15 or 12 or 13 at the time, and I was impressed by all the research and academic papers behind it. And I read a lot. Obviously, when I was doing my master's, I read books about Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I was kind of surprised there was no book at the time about Cardano, because there's so much to cover. There's so much depth to it. So when I finished my master's around 2020, I asked a question on one of Charles's AMAs. At the time, I was thinking of writing a book, and I thought, because Charles talks so much, it'd be easy to write a book based on his transcripts. There was a book about Bitcoin at the time called The Collective Writings of Satoshi, and it was all based, the history of Bitcoin based on Satoshi's emails. And I thought it might be a cool idea to write a book about Cardano. So a few years later, it was 2021, 2022 when I had it finished. I took 2 years on and off to write it, and I was grateful at the time. I got a lot of help from IOHK. John Woods at the time was there, and I pestered him for a few weeks, and he shared it internally, and I got some support. One of their editors helped me with the book for the first few chapters, and luckily the book was well received, and I went on to write 4 editions of that. But soon after I launched it, I was on a space with NMaker at the time and Book.io, and I was really fortunate that Book.io chose my book as their first book on Book.io after the Gutenberg Bible. So that gave the book a good lift. And at the time, it was released as the first book on Book.io, and it did very well, surprisingly. Sort of, I think it was Book.io's honeymoon period as well, and it sold a lot in the first few weeks. And since then, I went on to write 4 editions of this book, updating it every January or so. As I said, I got a lot of help from the editor at IOHK, and he suggested some changes and improvements. And I really worked on that hard, and I updated it for the next edition. And again, luckily for me, Charles made a video highlighting the book, or talking about the book at the time, which gave it a boost as well. And it got a few reviews. And again, I went on to write 4 editions in total. There was the Voltaire edition, then the Chang edition, and the most recent one is the Plowman edition. And again, this was released with Book.io. And so I think I tried to improve it each time I wrote an edition, to shorten it and to make it more readable each time.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, definitely. Thanks for sharing some details there. It looks like we did capture on some of the story here. I'm just curious if we dive a little bit more. Let's make sure that we covered, what got you inspired to write about open source projects, and on obviously specifically Cardano focused here. And maybe we can dive into, how you're choosing which specific projects you'll highlight. This might lead us right into a little spotlight on the Aiken book.
Sure. Bear with me 1 second. Sure. So I joined the Cardano Academy then in 2023, and my job is to write the courses. So we just finished off CBCA, and then based on feedback, I wrote the fundamentals course, which is there at the moment. And we also have a few courses coming out this month on Aiken and also rewards calculation. So the Aiken book was sort of inspired by the course. It's similar content to the course, but in a book.io format. And when I joined CF, luckily for me, the three founders of Aiken were working for the CF at the time, Lucas, Matthias, and Casey. So I got a lot of help writing the course, and the book is based on that course, which is released this month. And I was inspired by some other open source projects, open books like Learn You a Haskell. I thought was really interesting, and I noticed I read a few programming books. They're either sort of really long, sort of Bibles of programming language, or something short and snappy. I thought it'd be better to write something shorter, hopefully. So I enjoyed. Aiken is a fork of a language called Gleam, and I read the documentation for Gleam, and I thought it was really friendly and really easy to follow. So I tried to make the Aiken book readable, and based on feedback from Lucas and Matthias, Aiken is generally an easy enough language to learn, but the sort of jump and the challenge for programmers is the mental shift from the account model to EUTXO. So I tried to explain that in the book and in the course, which is released this month. So it sort of takes programmers coming from a Web 2 world or from Ethereum or the account-based system through the EUTXO model, and it explains Aiken from the ground up. And my goal was just to get people curious about Aiken, so it would take them as far as they need to go to read the documentation and join the Discord server. So I read through all the threads on Discord for Aiken. I think Matthias did a good job of organizing all the threads, the important discussions and debates about Aiken, since it was really started a few years ago. And I tried to include all the important bits in the book. So luckily for me as well, book.io sponsored, and CF sponsored a giveaway of the book. So we gave away 2,000 copies of the book, and it's also available on Amazon as well. So far it's been well received, and I think since I started writing about Cardano, it's always been with the future in mind, so future audience really. I always thought if I wrote a book during the bear market, nobody could ever accuse me of jumping on the bandwagon, that I'd have a few editions under my belt by the time a bull market came around, because rightly or wrongly, that's when the audience and the footfall arrives, where curious new people start Googling Cardano and Googling Aiken. And the plan was always to have the books in good shape when there's demand for it, when the market sort of turns around, hopefully. And that's the exciting thing for me. When there's gonna be more demand, and hopefully the books are well received, and the courses as well. I should talk more about. On Cardano Academy, we have all our courses are completely free, and they're available. They're all on GitHub as well under CF and Cardano Academy, so anybody can contribute to the courses. And we started to use AI, and we're speeding up our sort of production of these courses. So we'll have more courses out soon where people can follow along. And there's always, obviously, with everything in Cardano, there's future iterations because it needs to be updated. So we need really help from the community to keep these up to date and to keep them as good as possible for newcomers.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of inspirational stuff going on. And John, I guess what I would ask, just perfect segue from that last part there. we're needing the community to get involved. But in what ways has interacting with current project maintainers and contributors, how has that shaped the way that you write these books and these courses here? Do you see yourself as part of the open source movement, or more of just a bridge?
Sure. I don't code myself day to day. I previously worked in security and cloud computing. I did all my ethical hacking certs, but I sort of went into pre-sales and then product management and technical writing. So I wrote I half the book is Aiken code for this book, but for the more advanced topics, I probably need some help. And I specifically steered away from really advanced stuff because I just wanted people to get curious about the language and to take them from sort of some level of competency. And it's all written in 66 sort of short sections, so anybody can contribute a new section or something that's missing. So for example, I already had interest from University of Zurich, so Christian Badischer and his students learn Ethereum and they learn Cardano as part of their syllabus in the college semester, and he was interested in developing PyCardano because Python is the language used in academia, but also to sort of track and to add the sort of off-chain component to the book as well. So it's not just covering on-chain contracts. So straight away there was an obvious additional section we can add to the book. So I think that's a good example of where someone can easily contribute just a few pages or a few sections that would add greatly to the book and make it more rounded and more complete, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that there's such good impact coming from these contributors here, and then influence as well, as you said, writing certain sections there. What would you say you find the most challenging as far as the different aspects involved with writing about open source projects? And what lessons have you learned the most from documenting technical, fast-moving work that in an accessible way?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, for example, I have my own book on GitHub as well, and it's open source, but this book has changed a lot since 2022, and it's sort of a good barometer for how much Cardano changes. So there was chapters in the book that weren't there in the initial edition in 2022. For example, there's a whole chapter on Aiken, and I had to adapt it quickly for like developments in stable coins and stuff. And I think that's the challenging part for anybody writing about Cardano, that it's so fast moving that the content sometimes can go off really quickly. It can be like a carton of milk shelf life sometimes, and so it's always good to you do learn some tricks along the way, how to give it a greater shelf life and that it reads better, it's sort of future proofed. I think that that's Cardano is fairly deep, and it's what attracted me to the Cardano initially. Was it seemed to have legs, and I was here for the long term. So I always felt a book about it would be interesting, and it would always be a work in progress. So a year is probably the minimal time you'd want to update it. You could arguably update it every 3 or 6 months, but just to keep it sensible, I think I'll try and update it once a year at the most. And the original idea was to update it at every hard fork. So and to try and name, just the way it worked out, I named the editions after the hard forks. So the Chang edition and the Plowman edition recently. And yeah, it's interesting. I always thought I'm following it anyway, and I'm writing about it anyway. So it was sort of a nice challenge to write a book, and I always said, as long as it's accurate to begin with, I don't annoy people. I can always improve the structure and the readability as I go along. So.
Well, that's great. Aside from future versions of Cardano for the masses, you said currently based on hard forks, are there any other topics or trends that you're most excited about covering next? Additional coursework? How do you see your role as a writer evolving in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things about Cardano is the EUTXO model. So it allows you to do new things and to try out new things. Like, for example, with the Aiken book, I gave them away from a lot of the books from my phone using Vesper Wallet. I was able to send a book, 50 books to one person, and I recorded it on YouTube, on Twitter, on X, and this is where it's recorded on eutixo.org. So for people new to new to Cardano and new to blockchain, even, they can see how easy it is to send a book. This is how you send a book from Vesper Wallet. It's just like literally a few clicks. You just add your ADA handle, and then it's as simple as adding your ADA. You don't have to add any ADA. You can just add an asset. So in this case, I'm adding a book, and I'm sending it to someone just with a few clicks. So I thought that was a really sort of cool demo, and it's sort of powerful to show a new person, and they can just look on their phone and see the book arrive in their wallet and to read it then on Book.io. So I think stuff like EUTXO and Cardano in general, it's really cool. Book.io have all sorts of new models, enabling to try new sort of ways of distributing books as well, and new ideas of giveaways. This was sort of the first time I think they did a giveaway where we gave away 2,000 books, and it went fairly well. It was well received on X and LinkedIn as well, and it reached different audiences on X, and LinkedIn was more sort of professional sort of audience. So we reached a lot of project managers and coders from outside the ecosystem, which is really interesting. I think we got a nice review from one of the managers in JP Morgan who managed digital assets team there. So that was really interesting and something you mightn't have got on X traditionally, I think.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, John, I definitely appreciate you joining us and taking some time going over some of the different things that you've written, and obviously your work for Cardano Academy there as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
No, just to highlight that all the Academy courses are free, and we have some more courses released this month. So they're good to recommend to new people. We have courses for all levels, from beginner level to developers can look at the Aiken course, and we have new courses on rewards calculation and more technical stuff coming.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I definitely want to thank you once again, John. If you have not yet, go and try to find yourself a copy of Aiken. Of course, go ahead and register for some of the Cardano Academy courses here. Get your blockchain education up and going. Any further questions on the Cardano Academy or any of these books, feel free to reach out to us here at Open Source Office. If you're liking the content, don't forget to give us a like, subscribe. If you have some questions, feel free to leave something in the comments. But until the next time, thanks again, John, and we'll see you.
Thanks.